Today, I am joined by someone that knows high performance on and off the rugby field and has had multiple successes in different careers. Phil Mackenzie is a former professional rugby player and capped international for Canada, playing in World Cups at Rugby Union. Phil is somebody that I know well and I've played rugby with, and is just genuinely a really good guy. He's then transitioned into building Lean Squad, which was a personal training online business effectively. But he was one of the, not one of the first, but certainly got into building a personal brand early, has over 500,000 followers on Instagram, and has really evolved how he documents his life. He has 4 boys under the age of 7 and is managing to build and open new businesses. He's got a new mouth tape business, which is fantastic. But we're going to talk his transition from sport to personal brand to PT and then into the new business, into taper. Phil's a really interesting guy, a really down-to-earth and really funny, naturally funny and charismatic guy. And I really enjoyed this podcast with him. Having 4 boys under the age of 7 is a job for anybody, but to run an online brand and multiple businesses is just mind-blowing what you can do. So I enjoyed talking to Phil today on the Secret to Success podcast. Phil, welcome to the pod. I'm going to fire into our first question and get it started. Look, success looks different to everybody. What does success look to you, and how has that evolved over time?
Oof, that's a good question. I honestly think younger Phil would have said success is a whole pile of money. I really do think I would have thought that. And I think fast forward to today, maybe hopefully a little bit wiser, I would say, success is, I really do think about balance and finding something you love. I know it sounds probably very corny, but believe me, I've gone through the stages of where, I was chasing, that max level of output. Certainly when our twins were born, I was like every waking hour I was putting into work. And I think, at that point it's detrimental, even if you're making, a little bit more money or a lot more money. I think there's a point where it's not really worth it. And I think it's hopefully, I'm realizing that balance. And I know a lot of people out there will say you can't have balance. I know I certainly didn't have balance in my rugby career. I think I was so focused on that. But looking back on it, I think balance is, in a lot of ways, is a good thing. You get a little reprieve from, thinking about something 24/7 every single day of the week, where it just consumes you and in a lot of ways makes you unhappy. So I think for me, as corny as it sounds, I would say a balanced life is probably a successful one.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I've had a couple of other sportsmen that transitions through the years, and the theme's the same. Like, you get so focused and fixated, which I think you've got to be elite, top level sportsman. But in the moment, if you were wise enough at 21 to 24 or whatever you're sort of going, you'd understand that actually having that balance and having that awareness would be really helpful. But you're so focused in it, and it's just sort of this sort of like ironic twist that you can't get out of that until it's almost too late at times. A friend of mine was a professional footballer. He didn't really appreciate it till he'd blown his ACL out about 3 times. He was on his way out. And he's like, actually, I'm really enjoying football now because there's less pressure. And yeah, it's interesting. What's the secret to your success? Like, and there's a bit of a prelude to this question. Like, you've had 3 careers to a degree, or you're going through different stages, 4, I suppose, if you include the kids. So from rugby through to being a dad of 4 boys, which always makes me cringe and also makes me smile when I watch your Instagram, through to Lean Squad, personal brand, like we've just said it off there, built a personal brand almost right at the beginning of personal brands and before it was really cool and trendy, and into the mouth tape business now, which is going really well, as you say. Like, what's the secret to that success?
I think it's, a lot of ways, it's like probably a microcosm of, our rugby career when we were trying to become professional rugby players. I think you've got to iterate and you've got to adapt. I think, for me, certainly in my rugby career, I was told so many times I wasn't going to be a professional rugby player. I wasn't going to play for Canada. I wasn't good enough, fast enough, like all of these things. So you have to learn and figure out ways to adapt and change and, work around the system. And I think a lot of ways, like the personal brand stuff, I never set out to be an influencer, I guess. I still cringe at that word. But I guess it happens by kind of default. I think if you're authentic and you keep trying to figure out what content resonates with your audience, and that messaging and how you convey that messaging. If you look at what I first started posting, I don't even know how many years ago, 7 years ago now, it is so different to what I post now. And that's because times have changed, how people receive messages have changed. And I think, again, yeah, it just comes back to adapting. And when things don't go your way, you don't give up. I know, again, probably I'm sounding like a corny broken record here, but I think my one skill, because I was never by any shape of the imagination the most talented rugby player, or am I the best on social media? I think it's just resilience. People could tell me I suck, they didn't like me, whatever it is, and I'm a I don't love it, but I won't
Yeah, yeah.
stop me from trying to chase my dream and do what I got to do to try and reach my goals, I guess.
Yeah, your work ethic was always incredible. Like I always saw that at Cov when we played at Coventry together, and then going on throughout that, like your work ethic, and even like to a degree, like obviously you sort of I've watched your journey for the last few years, and even to post every day is work ethic. Like I know that's hard work, I know that's a lot of thought, and then obviously to change how you are, like, and I love the stuff when you're sort of almost talking for the boys, like day in the life of a 2 year
Yeah,
old, like just getting up, is like, what are we
yeah,
going to
yeah,
do
yeah.
today, like. And just like, even if like the fitness and lean squad stuff isn't for me personally, like I'll follow because I know there's going to be some good content about the kids. I can really resonate trying to be a dad at the moment, not to your degree, but like the work ethic for me was always big for you. And obviously, like you say, the resilience there is key, and that is a key thing in, I suppose, in anything in life, let alone just sort of business and parenting. But looking back, which I'm sure you've done, what's the one thing you wish you'd done differently, and what could beginners learn from your experience in any part of your different careers as it is?
Yeah, I think I thought about this a lot with rugby. In so many ways, I was so fortunate to, like, that was my dream, right? To be a professional rugby player, to go to a World Cup, to play in England. But I think what I would do differently, it kind of comes back to that balance, is enjoy it. Like, I think I had zero balance. Like, I vividly remember, going on tour. We could be in like New Zealand, or I remember being in Paris, and, some of the guys asking, do we want to go for a walk? And I would say, oh, I don't want to walk because I don't want to tire out my legs for the game tomorrow. You know what I mean? It was like, it was so consuming. And then what you end up doing is you sit in your hotel room, probably stewing about maybe a drop pass, or something that happened in practice, or who's getting picked, like all these things you can't control ultimately. So I think that was like, if I could tell my boys, like, if you are ever in a position to do something you absolutely love, like, don't let it suck the joy out of you. And I know a lot of like professional hockey players and stuff, and they don't really love it because they let that pressure get to them. And I did the same thing. So I don't want to sound preachy, but I think the same goes through. There's a point with like Lean Squad, I still work on it today. Like, so lucky. I get to work on my own hours. I can travel the world. I don't have to go into an office. I'm my own boss. But sometimes you just let that pressure get to you, and the joy of what, I'm filming workouts for a living. Like, that if you had asked me 10 years ago what my dream would be, it would be to film workouts for a living. You know what I mean? And so when I feel like that joy is being sucked out of it, I try to remind myself that I am really lucky. And honestly, I think the best remedy for that is just slowing down, like putting my phone away, not just switching off. Because if you don't switch off, you're on way too long, and you're going to burn out. And I think that would be one of the few pieces of advice I'd give my younger self.
My girlfriend's telling me all the time to slow down. Like, I don't know whether it's a boy thing or what.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's like our makeup. Like, there's a couple of points I pick out of that. So I always remember when I joined Coventry. Like, I was like an amateur all the way through, and I was. You were better than me, but I was a bit like you. I wasn't the most talented, but I worked quite hard, and I tried my best. And I got there, and like a lot of the lads was sort of had come through academies and played professional for so long, and they were always like sick of it. And I was like, how are you sick of this? Like, we get to come up and train each day, but I think they'd gone through this system so much, and then almost had the joy beaten out of them. And my little girl now started to get to play tennis, and because I'd watched that King Richard film when I wanted to be Serena Williams.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but yeah, so she's playing some tennis at the moment. I always try and tell her when she's going down. I was like, what are we going to do today? She's like, listen, and we're going to enjoy ourselves. And I'm just like, I desperately do want her to enjoy it, because I know, and she's 5, like there's no pressure. So like, fuck. But like I know going up as you get older, like the pressure on, especially the kids with social media and stuff now. Like I see step kids with, it's the pressure's huge. Like
Yeah.
I want them to enjoy life and want to enjoy those moments and get out there. And I suppose the other point to you there, where you say like you're always on, like your job is social media to a degree, or you're the influence side. Like so, it's probably hard to get out of that at times, right? Like so, you're in this sort of like cycle, I imagine, or this washing machine. I don't know. Is that hard to sort of get off it and get out of it?
Yeah, I think if you look at like you said, at the beginning, I posted probably every day for a long time. I don't know how long. My posting cadence now is like sometimes it's once a week, sometimes, multiple days. Like this week, I think I've done stories maybe a couple times, 2 days out of the, 5 days that have passed. And I think I have a way better balance. Like, again, like my happiness, if I posted 7 days a week, would be down here. And maybe it's like a few more, whatever, like a little more revenue or whatever it is, inspire a few more people. But like my happiness is way down here. So if posting twice a week, is here and my happiness is up here, like I'm going with that now. And I think I was way too short sighted. I think social media is a huge problem. Like I can feel my anxiety increase when I see someone talking about, how well their business is done in 1 month, and they're the anomaly. Like those people are the anomaly. Most people who are super successful, it's been a long, long time. But that reality gets distorted nowadays because of social media. And I know for like kids perspective, like they'll see all these fancy cars, again, they're hearing this messaging, you can be a millionaire by the time you're 12 nowadays. And
Yeah.
it's like, it's just not reality. And so for me, it's like really making that effort to be okay with not being on social media all the time. And there's been a couple of days this week, for example, with our mouth tape, I'm just like thinking about it all the time. I just like throw my phone away, leave it in a drawer. If it's on me, I'm going to look at it. So,
Yeah.
again, it comes back. Like, I think the narrative that from so many of these people is like, you have to be so focused. Like, first of all, these people who say that, if they have kids, they don't see their kids. I can tell you firsthand. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like,
Yeah.
and if you don't want to see your kids, probably don't have them. That's fair. But like, I like being with my kids. I like throwing the football with them, doing all this stuff, going to hockey. So like, again, it's that scale of balance. And that's really what I try and achieve now.
Yeah, no, and it's lovely to hear. I do think like people do have kids because they think they should have kids, and not always because they want to have kids and then spend time with it. And it's something like I'm sort of learning a little bit through there. Like society says you should have kids, but then actually when you get them, you're like, I'm gonna put them in after school club. I'm gonna get my grandparents to look after them. I'm gonna do this. And actually, the reality is like you need to own that a little bit. So, what's the biggest risk you've taken in your career, and how's that shaping you so far?
Ooh, I mean, I think we were talking about earlier, I think like starting from the rugby days, I like taking risks. I moved to Australia in grade 11 for an exchange. It's probably not like my life was in actual danger, but it was risky in terms of, putting myself out there and like getting out of my comfort zone. Obviously, I'd never lived away from home. I was going to, a country where like rugby is, one of the predominant sports. They're amazing, so that was like a super uncomfortable situation that I put myself in. And I think that kind of allowed me to be comfortable with being uncomfortable later in life. Obviously moved to England and we ended up playing in Coventry there. That was, another situation. And I think that happened frequently in my rugby career. And that kind of bled into what happened now. I think when we moved back to Canada, I retired from rugby, no idea what I was going to do. We bought the house we're in right now, and I was like, I'll be the GC, like general contractor, kind of build it from the ground up. And I don't know if you do this in England because I know you're in the property game, but I had to dig like a silt fence around the property. And basically, I built this tiny little fence. Like it was not a lot of physical labor, and like I've done hard things in my life. I did that, and I'm like, this is 100% not for me. It just wasn't my thing. So I was like, I walked away from it, and in a lot of ways, it was probably the easy thing for me to do would have been to stay because like I had that, it would have turned out to be, more lucrative and a better investment and guaranteed money in my pocket. But I decided, I just knew I wanted to do something in business outside of renovating and building houses. So that was, I guess, in a way, a risk I took. And then, that's kind of, again, kind of gone snowballed into like Lean Squad. We decided to do our own app from the ground up. And I don't know, I'm sure, I don't know if you've ever heard this, but at the time everyone's like, just build an app, just build an app. And I'm like, yeah. It sounds so easy. And, hundreds of thousands of dollars later in time, like, I don't know what kind of apps people say, just build an app with, but certainly the app I built was so much work still to this day, so much time, the staff we had to have, like all of the work that goes into it. It was really, really hard, and it was a big decision, but it was ultimately like, a risk I wanted to take because I wanted it to be my app and I have full control versus doing some like the white labeled apps. So those are probably a few of those.
Yeah, the app ones again. Like I feel like sometimes like you talk about it quite casually now, and I remember seeing a lot of the stuff that you were doing. And 7 to 5 years is a long time in the social media and like the world it is now these days. And like you were doing stuff a long time before it was really like, oh, we'll just do that. Like it's on a whim. It's so easy now. Like and that I suppose that must have taken a lot of risk, a lot of balls to sort of really do that. Like building out an app, like even now is hard, let alone whatever it was 5 or 6 years ago that you started doing that. So that must have been a huge risk, and
Yeah, I
obviously,
think
like you
that
say,
the app
financial
was
commitment.
definitely a big risk. Like I actually signed a contract. I think it was with Vimeo, which is basically they did at the time, like it was COVID, and so all of these companies were popping up, and it would be like a white label app. So like me and you would have the identical app. It would just be like my face on it, yours on the other, and you have almost essentially like zero control. If you want to add a new feature, you can't. It's at Vimeo's discretion and all of these other companies. So we signed with Vimeo and I was paying to do that. And then my gut was just like, you know what? I do not want to do this. So we ended up having to pay for the full year. And we went, again, down the route of building ours from the ground up, which is like the undertaking was literally, I'd say 100x more time, effort, money than I thought. But again, it was like I wouldn't do it differently because I know I wouldn't have been happy with the other option, and so it's a decision that I like definitely still stand by, but I now appreciate the effort that goes into any app. When I see an app, I'm like, man, or I pick up on little things that aren't working, and I'm like, I feel for these guys because I know it's not that easy to just make an update, make a change, make an improvement. It all costs a lot more than you think, and is harder to do than you think.
There's a book you won't have time to read, I'm sure of it, but from barista to billionaire by Andrew Wilkinson, who like was big on like software he did stuff for Shopify and for Slack, and but he's a billionaire now. Like he invests, he's but really good guy, like really interesting. He's been on a Chris Williamson's podcast. I highly recommend it. But he was talking about being outgunned by Asana at the time. He was building something, and he had 10 million quid basically. To build something called Flow, which was like a version of Asana. And then the guy that sort of one of the guys that left Facebook then got 100 million quid of venture capitalists and just blew him out the water with Asana, like got all the best like software guys and what have you. And you're like, you couldn't do it with 10 mil.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy to think the amount of work and effort and talent you need to build any sort of software or tech when it
Yeah,
looks so simple, right? And there's so much stuff coming out, like it's crazy. So
100%.
so we've sort of half talked about this. So we'll go into a bit more depth. Obviously, again with the world that you live in and the social media stuff, like the world is constantly full of distractions. How do you stay focused and motivated? And I suppose not just in tech. I suppose with the boys, being a husband, which we should probably talk about more. Like and like how do you stay constantly motivated and not just distracted all the time?
I probably, you know what, I try not to delve on it too much, but I feel like I'm a scatterbrain, so like I don't know if I'm focused all the time. I'm probably focused on 100 things all the time, but I'm working for sure. Again, it comes back like I think, I really do think. everyone, especially, for kids and parents now, it's like you got to put a lot of effort into being better on your phone. And I know, again, you mentioned it, like our business is on our phone, but like our kids, one of the things, like we don't do screen time anymore because I think these all make a difference. But obviously, it starts with myself too. So, trying to balance that phone time. I just actually bought, I haven't used it yet. I will be, like, a little lockbox for my phone, get it
Yeah, yeah.
away, and then try and focus on the task because I think that's something I need to be better at. And then in terms of, like, with work, again, I think it's just like be okay with what you can do in just a day. Like, again, it's a constant work on with me because I think, you've got the same drive where it's like you think more fuel on the fire is just the best option. And that's how I've worked my whole life. But I can honestly say, like, you take your foot off the pedal. We were talking about it with our mouth tape, for example. The effort, consistent effort over a long period of time. It doesn't have to be crazy, but it starts snowballing and it pays dividends down the road. You just got to be okay with it not happening overnight, like you think everyone else's success is happening. And I think, again, that's just it's just a mindset thing and something you got to be mindful of consistently. Otherwise, again, you're going to burn out and then you're going to be unhappy. Like, I think, if you're always trying to attain something up here and you're not attaining it, then you become, like feeling down and like you're not good enough and all that jazz.
It's comforting to hear like that people have similar struggles. Like, sounds a bit sadistic, but like like a lot of the stuff that you say, I have similar stuff, and I'm nowhere near the levels of what you guys are at. So I feel you. I sort of say this saying, especially in like property, which we're over here, everything takes so long, but this is just life and business anyway. You've got to be impatiently patient. So you've got to be a bit impatient to sort of keep things moving and chase what you need to chase. But you've also got to be patient at the same time, like this sort of oxymoron of like sort of going around in circles. Like, and I think if you become a business person or you do entrepreneurship or you try and break the mold a little bit, you're naturally that sort of person anyway. You're naturally a bit impatient and want to try and create something, but yet you've got to be so patient to wait for this sort of 10 years. And, the whole Mosey thing of 1,000 hours or 10,000 hours now, like everything's like, you got to wait 10 years, not just a year, like some people do. And the other thing for you, to you, just to the point there, and for anyone listening, Phil has 4 boys under 7, and he doesn't. And I've seen this a lot, and I really admire this because this is hard. Probably, from outside of the hardest thing I reckon you do is the boys don't get screens, which is you've said has dramatically helped their concentration, mood, like loads of stuff, which is remarkable. I'd love to be able to do it. I cheat. I won't lie. I cheat sometimes. I do try. I'm trying conscious, but we do cheat with Edith. Look at the screen, but like that's remarkable. That is amazing that they do that.
Yeah, we got a lot of questions when we did it, but I think we were using our screens as like a crutch, like way too much. And again, I think what probably deters people from, like, even if you go no screens 90% of the time or 80%, it's still way better than just having screens out all the time. And I think like that was our default. And the tipping point was when we went to Turks and Caicos. We took 3 of the 4 boys and they'd had their iPads the whole flight. So it was like a 4-hour flight. We get to this like kids paradise, amazing hotel. And they're like, we want our iPads. I'm like, oh my God, I wanted to pull up my hair. So we got home and they woke up and they were like, can we turn on TV? And I was like, TVs, iPads, everything's gone. And you know what was the craziest thing? In 2 days, I swear to God, it's like they had a memory of a goldfish, forgot about their screens, and life just went on. And, so now we'll do like movie night or something, but no, like zero iPads, zero phones. Life is like way better. And if you look at like our oldest son, who really had the iPad probably, well, up until, I guess it's nearly been a year, so 6, versus our 2-year-old who's had 0. He's never had an iPad. It's crazy. Like, he was on it so much. Our little one is amazing at independently playing. Like, it's just like so different. And again, it's like one of those things I would tell parents, like, sometimes you just want a second of quiet, but if you stick with it, you'll get the quiet and you'll actually get to watch them play independently. And that's like way more rewarding than seeing them look at a screen and as if no one else exists in the world.
Yeah, it is remarkable how you do this well. And you got to remember, like our parents, and I suppose us to a degree, we didn't have as many screens. I had some, but like there was a world before them, so I suppose there is an element of it. Like it's hard to say that now, eh?
I know, I know. I think the difference is like even for me, it's like when we grew up. I know we sound like one of those old parents, but like you know, the show that was on TV was the show. There was only
Yeah,
so
yeah,
many channels. Now you go on YouTube. If you don't like that show, you change it in 5 seconds to another one,
yeah,
and it's like that scrolling syndrome where you just want to be like max level entertained. And so like our TV was very different than the TV now. And our parents who probably had like one channel,
yeah.
maybe if they had a TV, was even to a lesser degree. So it is possible.
Yeah, yeah, there was a life before it, and it's even
Yeah,
interesting. Like you say, this is how like what it is. Like you say, you don't even say TV there. You say our TV now is YouTube. Like, and YouTube is the telly, right? Like, and that's
yeah,
crazy in its own world because the and I like the YouTube. I like it a lot, but it is crazy to have that when there's so many choices.
yeah, yeah.
Um, how have mentors, peers, and even competitors influenced your growth and success?
Ooh, I think competitors honestly is a really important one. I think if you're going to start any business, you got to see and take notice of your competitors. I don't think it's a bad thing. It's like if we were rugby players, like you would aspire, you're looking at all the other players, you're looking at the best players, and you're trying to attain that level of success, and you're trying to actually break down how they achieved that, what types of training they're doing. So for me, in like the social media business world, it's no different. You look at what everyone else is doing and you try and do it your own way. I think that's important, but you also try and iterate and try and use all of the information out there to generate your own success. So I think for sure, like competitors, definitely be aware, and use what you can to your advantage. And then in terms of like mentors, I think I I haven't had I have some friends who are really, really successful in the business world. So I try and pick their brains. Honestly, probably like, Brody's my best sounding board, my wife, in terms of like just bouncing ideas off. I think like my certainly Lean Squad and, Taper is probably more of a traditional like CPG brand that I could have some more traditional mentors probably, which maybe I will seek out because I love getting help, and I think it's super valuable. But Lean Squad was a weird one. Like I felt like no one was really doing what I was other than competitors. So like it was really hard to chat to someone doing the same kind of thing I was doing, right? So and understanding like the social media and all that stuff. So I haven't had a traditional mentor, I guess, in terms of like business. My dad was successful with his business, so he's helped out when he can. But in terms of traditional one, I haven't had probably as many as I would like. But maybe with Taper, we'll kind of try and build that out.
And obviously, for in terms of we'll make a note to this, but like the inspiration for you is obviously I see a lot. Your granddad is what is he 82, 83, and like probably the fittest human being on the planet. Like it probably never mind for his age, just in general. Like that's a big inspo for you guys as well. I see that a lot.
For sure. Yeah. I think in terms of like inspiration, sorry, I missed that. My granddad for the health and fitness, my nanny and granddad. So he's 84. My nanny's 82, turning 82. They're like, they just show me on a daily basis, like how much better life can be if you prioritize your health. So like undoubtedly that for sure has been a huge one. And then both of them, my parents, my dad, my mom, and my grandparents, they always told me, no matter what idea I had, they were 100% for it and told me I could do anything. So I think like, again, I think so many people fear failure, where to me, I try and remember that the only failure is not trying something. Like that's the only way you're guaranteed to fail. And again, like, moving to Australia, New Zealand, going up against the best, like I knew I probably wasn't going to be anywhere near their level. But I knew if I didn't go, I would 1000% was never going to get better and never going to achieve that success in my dreams. So again, I think like embodying failure, being okay with it, putting yourself out there, like those are all things that they've definitely taught me. And I think I would probably say I'm one of the more comfortable people with like being really uncomfortable in all endeavors. And I hope, if I can teach my kids anything, it's that, because I think that unlocks way more opportunities in life.
It builds that resilience, doesn't it, that you mentioned earlier? It builds that resilience by putting yourself into those uncomfortable situations. And then also it creates opportunity, like activity creates opportunity, right? So like, I think to you with your rugby career, like you, and people might not know this, I always remember watching this because I was in the country when you did it, but scoring that try against Japan for Canada in New Zealand, in like the sort of greatest sport, like New Zealand, massive rugby nation, like the place to play rugby, play a World Cup there, score like the most memorable try against such a good Japanese team, like to get that journey and do that, like it would have been so easy for you just to stay at home, play for the local club side, probably be a bit of a rock star there and move on, but like to push yourself to get to those sort of like they're obviously moments that live with you for life, don't they? I imagine, like probably still dream about that try, I imagine. So
Yeah, that was a funny one too, because it was actually when we were in Coventry, that same coach told me I wouldn't play for his team. So he announced a
wow, yeah,
squad for November tour. This was before that World Cup, obviously. And he said, you're too slow, you're not fast enough, you're not going to play for my team. And I
I
was just
remember
like,
this. I do remember this.
so
Yeah.
so furious, but I think it helped me in so many ways, because again, like, every time, I always thought there was two types of players. Like, there was the type of player who if you got aggressive feedback, let's say, or negative feedback, they would go within themselves, and that would pretty much, it was the dagger in the coffin. And there was other players who would take that as like a challenge. And I think certainly when I was at London Welsh, like a crazy coach there, but I think he gave me some negative, very negative feedback as well. Maybe it was just me. Um,
Yeah.
Ended up 4 weeks later, after he told me I would never play for his team again as well, I ended up playing every single game, scored a bunch of tries for the rest of the season. And I think sometimes you just need that push to really catapult yourself and challenge yourself. So I try and use, like, even now with Taper, if someone, says no to me, I use it as kind of like fuel to my fire. Like, I'm going to prove you wrong. I can guarantee that much. So stay tuned.
Yeah. What's maybe the hardest decision you've had to make? Like, have you had some tough calls in terms of like crossroady type moments, or anything where it's been really difficult?
I think it's just, I mean, COVID was hard. It sounded crazy because COVID was really, really hard for Lean Squad at the time, because 90% when I was doing programs, we were doing pretty well. Um, all of my programs, like 95% of them, were for gym people going to the gym. So COVID hit, everyone was like, you must be doing amazing. And no one's going to the gym. So sales went to literally almost $0 overnight. And so that was a pretty tough time. And then again, it's like, you can either just sit in your bed and cry about it, or try something else. And so that was the moment I'm like, you know what, Brody, I'm just gonna film workouts for free. I think it was a 7-day challenge at the time, for free on YouTube. And I was just gonna encourage people to join me, get moving, body weight on TV. People absolutely loved the challenge. So it was like a 7-day challenge. So then I was like, wow, I'll try charging people to do it. And we did a 30-day challenge at home. Absolutely went crazy. And then I kept that going, pretty much to this day forward, filming these workouts like Peloton, except it's like you're on a journey. I'm doing the fitness program with you. So I think that was, again, just an instance where it's like, when shit hits the fan, you got two choices: either do something about it, or sit there and cry. And I think we know what option is always going to be the best one.
Yeah, the adaptability is incredible. Like, and that's obviously a theme through all the stuff we've spoken about already today. If you could go back and start again, like, I'll sort of frame this a little bit, because what I really like, I had Brad Webber, who's played a ton of times for New Zealand on the other week, and he was really good. Like, 'cause I was like, I asked him, like, if you had anything to start again, what would you do? He's like, probably nothing, because it's framed and shaped me to who I am now. Like, and he had a few challenges. He nearly didn't make it, broke his leg, a few other bits and pieces, and what have you. He enjoyed the beers at uni too much, I think he said. And like, how, if you could go back and start again, would there be much that you would change within that? Like, is there a different path that you maybe take, or is there anything like, I suppose we've asked about the regrets, but would you change anything within that?
Honestly, yeah, probably similar similar message. I don't think I would change anything except try and enjoy it more. Like if I go back and be like, don't get me wrong, I had a lot of fun, but I think I could have had way more fun. And again, it's a hard one because I don't know in hindsight, like if you told yourself to chill out more, like what's the balance, right? To
Yeah.
get to where you want to go. But again, I find like I can be successful now with a little more balance and enjoying the journey versus just like focusing on where I'm going, every second of every day. So I think that would be the one thing I'd be like, just soak it up, enjoy it, have fun, and have a feeling I would still be able to have accomplished the things I think, but you never know.
Yeah. So it's hard. And I suppose what's next for Phil Mackenzie and the next 5 years? Like, is it double down on taper? Is it continue lean squad? Like the brand stuff? Like, where do you go? You seem to have a lot of choices, a lot of options. It must be exciting.
Yeah, I think again, it's just trying to figure out what we enjoy most. Like lean squad, I think like I'll probably film workouts forever because again, it's one of those things. It's like your job is filming workouts. I mean, that's a pretty good gig. And I definitely love helping people. So I think that's massive. But in terms of like time commitment, definitely try and shift more towards taper. I think it could be something that really helps change a lot of lives. I think like you've probably heard it in the podcasting and kind of all over social media how important sleep is. And I think as parents of four boys, and even though we're in fitness, like we didn't realize how much control you actually have over your sleep and how much better it can be. And I think parents especially don't understand that. We used to believe the same. Like you got four kids, your sleep is going to suck for the next 20 years. And that's definitely not the case. So that would be one thing I would say for sure. Oh, Ashton just walked in. Uh, um, and then I think trying to grow that, trying to make it, something that's really really impactful. I think again, you got to be in it for the right reasons, and we're so passionate. It sounds weird, but like so passionate about sleep and mouth taping and nasal breathing and all that. So we're trying to iterate, again, like do things differently than our competitors. We know what everyone else is doing. We're kind of we've already done some, I think, what innovative stuff we can, like female specific nasal strips that are 20% smaller, or smaller mouth tape, so it's not feeling claustrophobic or intimidating, and just really expanding the products that are going to help people and make like a tangible difference. So I think that's really our goal. If we could be talking in a few years and we're helping hundreds of thousands of people a month, I mean that would be pretty cool, and that would be something I think we'd be very happy with.
We talked about this. I do a bit of CrossFit now, and with people laughing because they'll be like, "What's all you talk about?" But the guy Matt Fraser, who like was the goat of it and won seven
Yeah.
times in a row, he said if you could sell like sleep and a tablet, like if sleep was a tablet, like it would, whoever created that would be like the world's richest person. Like it is a cheat code. Like he was like, it is the greatest thing ever for recovery, for all those bits. And like you say, I think society says, like you say, you have kids or a kid and that's it. Your sleep's gone. You should just put up with that. But it is bad. We were recording this one the 31st of January actually, so end of Jan. We've cut out a lot of alcohol out of our diet, and like we haven't drunk through Jan, and we probably won't drink much now throughout the year. Like it's because that's affected our sleep massively, and we've noticed a huge change. So I know loads, like you say, with the nasal stuff and the mouth tape, like it's huge. So I'm sure, like as the more people learn about this, I can only see that business going bigger and bigger. Eh?
Yeah. I think it's just, some people are intimidated. So we're trying to break down those barriers, make it less intimidating. Because again, Brody's response when we were like tracking, our sleep every single night, and I, said I'm going to try mouth taping. She's like, there is no effing way I'm trying that. And then she saw my sleep score and she's like, oh my God. She's like, okay, I'll try it. And that kind of, led us to where taper is today, a smaller mouth tape, less intimidating one. And again, it's just breaking down those barriers. Like anything, what you don't know is a little intimidating and scary. So educating people and just trying to be approachable, I think is a huge part of what we're trying to do.
Mate, you smashed that. Like I said, I love watching your journey. I love seeing you parent the boys. I take tips. It's interesting. It's also something like, God, I'm glad I haven't had that many children and all boys. there's definitely
Yeah.
there's not much jealousy some days, but like, good on you. Like, you do it so well, mate. It's been a pleasure. Like, I've absolutely loved having a chat to you, and thank you for giving up your time. I know you're super busy, so spending 40 minutes with me today has been awesome. So thanks a lot, mate.
Thanks for having me.